I never thought the moment my marriage collapsed would come with champagne glasses clinking and Detroit's skyline glittering behind me. It was supposed to be a celebration. Our 7th wedding anniversary. My husband had insisted on renting a rooftop venue downtown, filled with his colleagues, friends, and family. At one point in the evening, a colleague asked about a new project, and my husband, too busy entertaining a group, shoved his phone into my hand. "Show him the pictures, babe," he said casually, nodding toward the gallery. The phone was warm in my palm. I swiped up to the photos, and that's when it happened. A banner notification slid across the top of the screen, bold and undeniable. "Can't wait to taste you again tonight. Don't let her wear you out first." The words burned. The sender's name was right there, a name I didn't recognize, but the hearts and the winking emoji told me exactly who she was. My fingers froze. My throat tightened. And before I could react, another message buzzed in. "Think she'll notice that I picked out your tie? Looks better on my floor." I swear the world stopped. The music still played, glasses still clinked, but around me it all blurred. My chest pounded so hard I thought I might faint. A woman near me gasped softly. She had seen it too. My husband, oblivious, was still laughing with his colleagues. I snapped. "Are you serious right now?" My voice cut through the noise, sharper than I intended. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. He looked over, confusion flashing across his face. "What's wrong?" I held the phone high, screen lit with the damning texts. This is what's wrong." His smile faltered. His skin drained of color. "Haley, give me the phone." "No," I spat. My voice shook, but it carried. "You've been sneaking around with her while smiling in my face, while our daughter sleeps down the hall at home, while I've been sacrificing everything for you. And now you're dumb enough to hand me the evidence in front of everyone?" A ripple of gasps moved through the crowd. Someone whispered his name. Another woman murmured, "Oh my God." He reached for the phone, but I yanked it back. My hands trembled with fury. "You want to play games? Let's play. Read it, everyone. Don't let her wear you out first. That's what your golden boy over here has been doing with his side piece." The silence that followed was suffocating. My husband stammered, "It's not what it looks like." I cut him off with a bitter laugh. "It's exactly what it looks like." And then, because humiliation is a beast that demands release, I did the one thing I knew would sear itself into everyone's memory. I hurled the champagne flute in my hand, not at him, but against the floor between us. The crystal shattered, the sound exploding like a gunshot. Shards scattered across the polished concrete, sparkling under the city lights. "Congratulations," I hissed, my voice low but deadly clear. "You've just managed to destroy your marriage and your reputation in one night." I turned on my heel and walked toward the elevator. My legs shook, but I forced each step steady. Behind me, I heard voices rising, my husband chasing after me, pleading my name. But I didn't stop. In those moments, I wasn't broken. I wasn't begging for answers. I was steel. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off the chaos above. Alone, I let my hands finally tremble. My reflection in the mirrored wall looked like a stranger. Mascara smudged, lips trembling, eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen in myself before. I whispered it then. Not for anyone else. Not for the crowd upstairs or the mistress who thought she'd won. But for me, this isn't the end. You have no idea what I'm capable of. And I meant it. That night, on the rooftop above Detroit, with glass still crunching under guests' shoes and my husband scrambling to spin a story, I vowed revenge. Not just for the betrayal, but for the years I had given him, for every sacrifice that went unnoticed, for every lie that made me doubt my own sanity. He thought those texts were private. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I would stay quiet. He was wrong. When I got home that night, after the rooftop explosion, I sat in the dark and thought about how the hell I had ended up here. People always say you should see the signs, that deep down you know. And maybe I did. But when you've invested everything in someone, you train yourself to ignore the alarms because admitting the truth feels like tearing your whole life apart. I met him in my mid-20s, back when I was climbing the ladder at a Detroit marketing firm. I was ambitious, independent, the kind of woman who had her life mapped out. He was magnetic, confident in a way that made rooms turn. At first, I thought we were equals. But slowly, without realizing, I let his dreams become the center of our world. When he said he wanted to move up in the automotive industry, I became the steady base. I stepped back from my career when our daughter was born. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd return once things stabilized. They never did. Instead, I managed everything at home: the bills, the appointments, the school forms, the dinners, the laundry. Every detail of our lives ran through me. He got to shine in public while I carried the invisible weight. The irony is, he liked to tell people I didn't work. I worked every damn day, just not in a way that earned applause. The house we lived in, the one with the sprawling yard and the high ceilings he loved showing off, wasn't even possible without me. My mom had left me an inheritance after she passed, money she had worked her whole life for. I poured most of it into the down payment. I thought I was investing in our future. Looking back, I basically funded the stage for his performance. There were signs: late nights that stretched into early mornings, unexplained expenses on our joint account, that cologne and perfume mix clinging to his clothes when he came home. Once I found a hotel key card in his jacket pocket. He laughed it off, said a coworker must have slipped it there as a joke. I wanted to believe him so badly that I swallowed my instincts and let it slide. I kept quiet because of our daughter. She's 9 now. Smart, sensitive, with my eyes and his stubborn streak. I didn't want her growing up in a broken home. I wanted her to believe in family, in stability. So I kept patching cracks in a wall that was already crumbling. The truth hit harder when someone else confirmed it. After the rooftop scene, I went to my sister's place, where my best friend Layla was waiting. She had that look, the one that says, "I know something you don't." She admitted she'd seen him out weeks earlier, holding hands with a woman who wasn't me. She hadn't said anything because she didn't know how to break it to me. Her words stung worse than the texts, because deep down, I already knew. That was the moment denial died. It wasn't just suspicion anymore, or paranoia, or overthinking. It was fact. My husband, the man I gave everything to, had betrayed me in the most public, humiliating way possible. And sitting there with Layla and my sister, my daughter asleep in the next room, I realized something. Every sacrifice I made, every dollar I poured into his life, every piece of myself I gave up, it had all been taken for granted. That's when I stopped asking, why me, and started asking, what now? The morning after the rooftop disaster, I woke up in my sister's guest room with a pounding headache and swollen eyes. For a moment, I thought it was all a nightmare. Then I saw my phone on the nightstand. 20 missed calls, a string of voicemails from him, half apologies mixed with excuses, and one desperate message that read, "Please don't ruin this for us. We can fix it." Us. The word made me sick. I didn't cry. Not this time. I stared at the screen until the weight of clarity settled over me. He wasn't sorry. He was scared. Scared of losing control. Scared of being exposed. Scared of what I would do now that the truth was out. That was the shift. The moment I went from victim to strategist. First move, money. I logged into our joint account before he had a chance to react. Years of running the household meant I knew every password, every bill, every transfer. My hands shook as I moved funds into an account under my name only. Clean, legal, untouchable. Within minutes, the account he loved to flash at dinners was frozen. Second move, lawyer. I didn't even hesitate. I searched up the best family attorney in Detroit, scheduled a consultation, and explained everything. The texts, the inheritance, the years of sacrifices. She listened, calm but sharp, and said words I'll never forget. "You have more leverage than you think." Third move, the house. My house. the one built on my mother's money. I called a realtor I trusted and quietly started the process of listing it. It wasn't just property. It was power. He could brag all he wanted about buying it, but I had the paperwork proving otherwise. By noon, my to-do list looked less like a breakdown and more like a battle plan. Each step I took gave me back a piece of myself I didn't know I'd lost. Of course, he tried to reach me. He showed up at my sister's door, pounding until the neighbors peeked through blinds. I didn't let him in. From the window upstairs, I watched him pace, his phone glued to his ear, probably calling the bank to figure out why his cards weren't working. I almost smiled. Later that night, when I was tucking my daughter into bed, he called again. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Haley, please," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "This has gotten out of hand. We can sit down, talk like adults. I love you. Don't do this to our family. Our family." The same family he risked for late-night hotel rooms and dirty texts. "You already did this," I said flatly. "You burned it down. I'm just making sure the ashes don't choke me and our daughter." There was a pause, the kind where you can hear someone scrambling for control. Then he snapped, his voice sharp. "You can't just take everything. The accounts, the house. None of that is just yours." But it was. And I had the proof to back it up. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just said, "Watch me," and hung up. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. Not because the pain was gone, it still sat heavy in my chest, but because I had direction. I wasn't flailing in betrayal anymore. I was moving, step by step, toward something that felt like justice. And as I lay there in the dark, I promised myself one thing: he wouldn't see it coming. He thought he had control. He thought I was still the same woman who swallowed lies to keep the peace. But that woman was gone. This was war, and I was already winning. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop with messages from him. The tone shifted with every call, first pleading, then demanding, then furious. I ignored them all. I didn't need to answer to know what was happening. His money was gone. The man who measured his worth by expensive watches, high-limit credit cards, and bar tabs he paid for with a smug grin, suddenly had no access to any of it. I pictured him standing at a gas station with his card declined, his jaw tightening as the cashier gave him that polite but pitying look. It gave me a satisfaction I couldn't put into words. By midday, I heard from Layla that he'd shown up at work looking rattled. She had friends in his office, and apparently, the story from the rooftop had already spread. Colleagues who once idolized him now whispered behind his back. His boss, a man who cared more about appearances than performance, had pulled him aside. Rumors in a corporate world are like poison, silent at first, then spreading until everything's tainted. The mistress wasn't handling it well either. I didn't know much about her yet, just her first name from the text thread, but I knew her type. The kind of woman who loved the shine of being with a man who could pick up the tab without blinking. So when his money dried up, so did her patience. Screenshots I'd saved on my phone included her messages begging for gifts, dinners, and our weekend escape. I had no doubt she'd start questioning her investment once she realized his wallet was no longer wide open. But the part that hit the deepest came from within my own family. My father-in-law called me, his voice low and heavy. "Haley, what's happening between you two? People are talking. I had a board member ask me directly about the scene at the anniversary party." I took a long breath. "Ask your son." There was silence, then a sigh. "I always told him you were the best thing that ever happened to him. If he threw that away, he'll have to live with it." It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it was acknowledgement, and it meant his father knew the truth. That was enough for now. Meanwhile, my husband tried his first desperate attempt to reel me back in. He showed up at my sister's house again, this time with flowers and a forced smile plastered on his face. My daughter was in the living room, so I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me. "Haley," he started, holding out the bouquet like it could erase everything. "Let's not make this ugly. We can fix this. I made a mistake. I stared at him, at the man who once promised to love me forever, but had instead treated me like a placeholder in his perfect image. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a choice. Over and over. His jaw clenched. He pushed the flowers toward me again. Think about our daughter. That one stung. Not because he was right, but because he dared to use her as a shield. I pushed the bouquet back into his chest so hard that a few petals fell between us. Don't you dare bring her into this. She deserves better than a father who lies to her mother every chance he gets. His expression cracked, anger flashing through the mask. You can't just cut me out of my own life. You think you can freeze me out, humiliate me, and walk away like you're untouchable? I met his glare head on. Watch me. Then I turned and went back inside, leaving him standing on the porch with crushed flowers in his hands. That night, I tucked my daughter into bed and felt a strange calm settle over me. The storm was only just beginning, but for once, I wasn't drowning. I was steering it. He could rage, beg, or threaten all he wanted. The consequences were already unfolding, and there was no stopping them now. Detroit isn't a big city when it comes to reputation. Word travels fast, and after the rooftop explosion, I could feel eyes on me everywhere I went. People whispered, tilted their heads with sympathy, asked careful questions they thought I didn't notice. But I didn't hide. I carried myself like someone with nothing left to lose, because in truth, I had already lost him. And that loss was starting to look more like freedom than grief. 2 weeks later, I heard he was parading her around town. Not quietly, not tucked away in hotels anymore, but openly. Dinner at expensive restaurants, drinks in bars we used to go to, even showing up at his coworker's birthday party with her clinging to his arm like she belonged there. It wasn't love. It was performance. He was trying to prove to everyone that he was still in control, still untouchable. So when Layla suggested we go to Prime Plus Proper, one of the nicest steakhouses in Detroit, I said yes without hesitation. It wasn't an accident that I chose the same night I knew he'd be there. The moment I walked in, I saw him. He was seated at a corner table, the kind meant for being seen, not for privacy. She was with him, younger, all sharp makeup and a too-tight dress, laughing a little too loudly. For a second, he didn't notice me. But when he did, the color drained from his face. I could have walked past. I could have ignored him and let the silence sting, but revenge doesn't thrive in silence. It thrives in moments that spread, in words people repeat later. I walked straight to their table. Conversations around us slowed, forks paused midair. The restaurant wasn't loud, so my voice carried easily. "Funny seeing you here," I said, standing over them. He cleared his throat, trying to act unbothered. "Haley, we're just having dinner. No need to cause a scene." "No need?" I leaned closer, keeping my voice sharp but controlled. "You caused the scene the night you shoved your phone in my hand with her messages lighting up the screen." The mistress shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between us. She tried to speak, but I cut her off with a look. I straightened and reached into my bag. My hands didn't shake as I pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying for days. With deliberate care, I dropped it onto the white tablecloth between their wine glasses. The thud was small, but final. "What's this?" he asked, his voice tight. "Divorce papers," I said. "You can read the details later, but here's the short version. The house, the accounts, custody of our daughter. They're mine. You get to keep your side project here." Gasps rippled through the nearby tables. A man at the next booth muttered, "Damn," under his breath. His face twisted, caught between rage and panic. "You think you can humiliate me in public again? You think this makes you look strong?" I tilted my head, my voice steady and cutting. "I don't need to think. Look around. Everyone here knows exactly what you are now. And the only thing strong about you is your ability to lie." The mistress tried to touch his arm, but he jerked away, his composure slipping. "Haley, we can discuss this in private." "No," I said, my words clear as glass. You lost the right to privacy the moment you made a fool of me in public. Consider this balance. I picked up his wine glass, swirled it, then set it back down untouched. Here's my advice. Get used to drinking alone. And with that, I turned and walked toward the door, my heels clicking against the tile, each step echoing louder than the last. Behind me, the restaurant buzzed with whispers. A line had been spoken, a moment etched, the kind that would spread through Detroit by morning. At the doorway, I glanced back just once. He sat frozen, papers still on the table, his mistress staring at him like she'd just realized the man she latched onto was a sinking ship. I didn't smile, but inside, I burned with a satisfaction so sharp it felt like oxygen after drowning. That was the second time I'd left him in ruins, and it wouldn't be the last. If there's one thing I knew about my husband, it's that he couldn't stand losing the narrative. Reputation was his oxygen, and the rooftop disaster followed by the steakhouse ambush had cut off his supply. I could almost predict his next move before he made it. He'd try to spin the story, paint himself as the victim, and shove me into the role of the bitter, unhinged wife. Sure enough, it started with a Facebook post, a carefully written paragraph about marital struggles and how we were working through difficult times privately. He framed it like we were a normal couple hitting a rough patch, not a man parading his mistress through town while I froze his accounts. He even had the nerve to write, "Please respect our family's privacy during this sensitive period." Privacy? He blew that to pieces when his mistress's texts landed in my lap. The comments section was split. A few of his coworkers chimed in with supportive emojis. But others? They weren't buying it. People had been at the rooftop party. They saw. And in Detroit, word spreads fast. Then came the real escalation. A local business blog picked up the story. Someone leaked that he'd been cut off at work, that his behavior was being questioned by his higher-ups. They even hinted at personal scandals that might affect his career. That one article was enough to light a match. Twitter got hold of it next. Screenshots of his mistress's messages, the ones I'd accidentally let slip to the right friend, made their way online. Within hours, strangers were tearing him apart. Imagine cheating on your wife with this level of stupidity. Men like this are why prenups exist. My condolences to Haley, but damn, she's handling it like a queen. And then, the hashtag. Texted the wife. It started small, with people mocking him, but by the weekend, it went viral. Memes popped up everywhere, fake text threads, jokes about sending the wrong message. Even celebrities weighed in with vague tweets about men exposing themselves by accident. Every time I opened my phone, I saw his downfall spreading. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. The internet did the work for me. Of course, he tried to fight back. He gave an interview to a local radio station, his voice dripping with fake calm. "I've made mistakes," he admitted, "but Haley has always been unstable, and she's blowing this out of proportion for attention." That was his fatal error. Because right after the broadcast, more receipts dropped. A friend of his, clearly fed up with his arrogance, leaked emails he'd sent to the mistress from his work account. They weren't just flirty. They were vulgar, explicit, and time-stamped during office hours. His employer couldn't ignore it anymore. He was suspended pending investigation, but everyone knew what that meant. His career, the shiny ladder he'd climbed for years, was splintering beneath him. The mistress didn't take it well either. I heard through whispers that she'd been hounded online, her name trending locally once people connected the dots. Photos of her with him surfaced, and the comments weren't kind. She locked her accounts within a day. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She signed up for a life built on lies. Now she was drowning in them. Meanwhile, my phone was blowing up. Messages from women I didn't even know came flooding in. "Stay strong, Queen. We're rooting for you. He doesn't deserve a second of your time." For once, I wasn't invisible. For once, people saw me. Not as his wife, not as the quiet supporter, but as the woman who refused to be humiliated quietly. He tried one last desperate stunt, a Facebook Live video, rambling about forgiveness and family. His eyes were wild, his tie crooked. It didn't make him look sympathetic. It made him look pathetic. The comments lit him on fire. Bro, log off. Forgiveness? After those texts? This ain't it, Chief. I watched it unfold from my sister's couch with a glass of wine in hand, my daughter asleep upstairs. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt peace. Not because it was over. It wasn't. But because the world finally saw the truth. He had spent years building an image. I had spent years supporting it. And now, in less than a month, it all crumbled. Not from me screaming, not from me begging, but from the simple, undeniable fact of his own actions. The PR war was over, and he had lost spectacularly. I always thought courtrooms smelled like old paper and nerves. When I walked into mine for the first hearing, that thought came true. The air was stale, heavy with tension, as though the walls themselves had soaked up decades of broken promises and financial bloodbaths. My husband sat across the aisle, eyes hollow, suit rumpled. He looked smaller than the man I once married. Not physically. He was still tall, still broad-shouldered. But the arrogance that once filled every inch of him had drained away. What sat in front of me was a man stripped of control, and he hated every second of it. My lawyer was razor-sharp, guiding me step by step. She laid out everything: the texts, the emails, the proof of my inheritance funding our home. Each receipt was a nail in the coffin of his defense. He tried to interrupt, muttering about marital assets and shared property, but the judge shut him down quickly. When it came to custody of our daughter, I didn't hesitate. I wanted full custody, with supervised visitation if he proved stable enough. My lawyer presented evidence of his reckless spending, his inability to prioritize family, and the public spectacle he'd created. Watching his jaw clench as the judge nodded along gave me a twisted sense of relief. The financial dismantling wasn't just paperwork. It was war. The accounts I had already secured were protected. The house was officially transferred into my name, thanks to the inheritance documentation. His attempt to argue otherwise backfired when my lawyer produced a signed statement from the realtor confirming I had made the down payment. Piece by piece, his empire crumbled. The company he worked for had already suspended him, but once the court documents became public record, they didn't just cut ties, they fired him. Officially, it was conduct unbecoming of an executive, but everyone knew it was the scandal. In a city like Detroit, where reputations matter almost as much as profits, no one wanted to be associated with him. And the dominoes kept falling. His father called me one night, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard. "Haley, I raised him better than this. I can't believe he threw everything away for a fling." He paused, then added words I never expected. "If you need anything, financially, legally, my support is with you, not him." That was the moment I knew my husband had lost not just a wife, but an entire family. His father had always been his safety net, bailing him out when he made mistakes, smoothing things over when his arrogance caused problems. Now, that net was gone, cut clean. His brother was no kinder. He told me bluntly at a family gathering, "You deserve better, Haley. He's on his own now." Even the mistress abandoned him. She'd been clinging on for the status, the money, the gifts. But when the cards declined, when his name was dragged through hashtags and blogs, she realized she wasn't boarding a yacht. She was sinking with a wreck. She stopped showing up at restaurants with him, stopped answering his calls. I heard through whispers she'd already moved on to someone else with deeper pockets and less baggage. By the third month of proceedings, he was a shell. He showed up late to hearings, unshaven, his lawyer whispering furiously in his ear. He tried to paint me as vindictive, as if I was destroying him out of spite. But the evidence was irrefutable. Years of infidelity, reckless financial behavior, emotional neglect. The judge didn't buy his act for a second. When the final ruling came, it was brutal in its clarity. Custody, mine. House, mine. Accounts, mine. Child support, mandated with strict oversight. He was left with nothing but his personal belongings, a used car, and the tarnished remains of his reputation. I walked out of the courtroom that day with my daughter's hand in mine, sunlight spilling across the steps. For the first time in years, I felt free. Not just legally, not just financially, but emotionally. The chains I had carried, his debts, his lies, his betrayals, were gone. Meanwhile, he unraveled. Without money, without family support, without a mistress to prop him up, he spiraled. Friends who once laughed at his jokes now avoided his calls. Former colleagues crossed the street to dodge him. His apartment was a downgrade from everything he'd bragged about. A small rental on the edge of the city, paint peeling and pipes groaning. I didn't see it firsthand. I didn't need to. But the whispers reached me, and each one confirmed what I already knew. He had become irrelevant. The last time I passed him in court, he looked at me with eyes that begged for mercy. But there was no mercy left. He had burned it all, squandered every chance. And as I walked past him, my daughter's hand still tucked in mine, I realized something that made my chest ache with both grief and relief. He wasn't my problem anymore. He had built his own downfall. All I did was stop carrying it for him. It happened on a gray afternoon in late fall. Detroit had that damp chill that seeps into your bones, the kind that makes the whole city feel tired. I was leaving the courthouse after signing the last round of documents that officially closed the divorce. My lawyer shook my hand, congratulated me, and walked off. For me, it wasn't celebration. It was release. And that's when I saw him. He stood by the steps, hunched against the wind, his coat too thin for the weather. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. The man who once walked into every room like he owned it now looked like he was trying not to take up space at all. His hair was unkempt, his eyes sunken. He clutched a folder of papers like it was a lifeline. "Haley," he said, his voice rough. I didn't stop walking. But he stepped in front of me, blocking the path. "Please, just a minute." I sighed, pulling my scarf tighter. "What do you want?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I don't know where else to turn. You've taken everything. The house, the money, custody. I don't even have my father's support anymore. He won't take my calls. My own brother won't look at me. His voice cracked. "I'm drowning." I looked at him. Really looked at him. This was the man who once held my hand at our wedding, who kissed my forehead when our daughter was born. And yet, this was also the man who betrayed me, who humiliated me in front of everyone, who gaslit me into silence for years. Both men lived inside him, but only one had won. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photograph. Our daughter, smiling at her school recital. His hand shook as he held it up. "I miss her. I miss us. I miss you." I didn't take the picture. "You don't miss me," I said flatly. "You miss the version of me who cleaned up your messes and made your life easy. That woman doesn't exist anymore." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" My voice sharpened. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something cruel in anger. What you did was deliberate, over and over again. You chose her. You chose the lies. You chose to risk everything we built, and you laughed while doing it. Don't you dare call that a mistake." He dropped his gaze, his lips trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I thought I was untouchable. I thought you'd never leave." There it was, the truth. The arrogance that had fueled him all along. He never thought I'd fight back. He never thought I had it in me. "I loved you," I said quietly. "God help me, I did. I gave you years of my life, my mother's inheritance, my body, my trust. I carried your image on my back while you played the role of the perfect husband. And what did I get in return? Humiliation. Lies. A knife in the back I never saw coming. Tears welled in his eyes. He reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back. "I don't need your apologies," I said. "They don't mean anything now. You had chance after chance to be the man you pretended to be. And you failed. Not just me. You failed our daughter. You failed yourself." He dropped his hand, defeated. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind whipping between the buildings. Finally, I took a step closer, my voice low but sharp as glass. You want the truth? You're the architect of your own destruction. Every brick in the ruins of your life. You laid them yourself. His face crumpled, a mix of shame and desperation. But I didn't give him the dignity of comfort. I turned, my heels clicking against the concrete, and walked away. I didn't look back, not once, because the past was behind me, and I had no intention of ever carrying it forward again. A year later, my life looked nothing like the ashes he left me in, and for that, I was grateful. I'd moved into a home that finally felt like mine, not a showroom for his ego. It wasn't the biggest or the flashiest, but it was warm, filled with light, laughter, and the quiet steadiness I'd been craving for years. My daughter had her own space, decorated with drawings and posters, a sanctuary untouched by lies. At night, we cooked dinner together, sang along to whatever was on the radio, and she'd fall asleep knowing her world was safe. I went back to work too, not as a concession, but as a reclamation. The marketing career I'd shelved for his ambitions became my own again. Clients valued me for my ideas, my drive, not my husband's title. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't behind anyone's shadow. I was my own light. People still whispered about him sometimes, though the noise was fading. His name came up less and less in social circles, and when it did, it was with pity, not admiration. He was no longer the man people envied. He was a cautionary tale. His apartment was small, his job prospects slimmer by the day. Even the woman he'd risked everything for had moved on, leaving him as disposable as the promises he once fed me. And yet, I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. His downfall wasn't my victory. My life was. There were mornings when I'd sip my coffee on the porch, the sun rising over Detroit's skyline, and I'd feel a calmness I'd never known in the years I spent fighting to keep my marriage alive. Freedom tasted different than I expected. It wasn't loud. It wasn't filled with fireworks. It was steady, quiet, like breathing clean air after being locked in a room too long. My daughter noticed it too. One night, as we were brushing our teeth side by side, she looked at me in the mirror and said, "Mom, you smile more now." It nearly broke me, because children see everything. She had carried the weight of tension in our house just as much as I had. And now, she was lighter. We both were. Sometimes people asked if I hated him. The truth? I don't waste energy on hate anymore. Hate ties you to someone just as much as love does. He doesn't deserve that power. What I feel now is nothing. A hollow space where he used to matter, replaced by the certainty that I survived, I rebuilt, and I thrived. The betrayal had nearly shattered me, but in the end, it became the fire that forged me into something stronger. If you had told me 2 years ago that I'd be here, stable, independent, unafraid, I would have laughed. Back then, I thought survival meant keeping the marriage together. Now I know survival meant letting it burn, walking away, and choosing myself. As for him, he's a ghost in the city we once ruled together. People barely mention his name anymore. And when they do, it's with a shake of the head, as if remembering a headline from long ago. He wanted to be untouchable. Instead, he became forgettable. I don't look back with longing. I don't look back with regret. I look forward, to my daughter's future, to mine, to the quiet strength that comes from knowing I didn't just survive betrayal. I rose above it, and on the nights when I reflect on it all, when the memories threaten to sting, I remind myself of the truth I learned the hard way. Betrayal isn't the end. Sometimes, it's the beginning of freedom. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories.